Hello, my fellow Lashpreneurs. Welcome to episode 8 of the Lessons of a Lashpreneur. My name is Tara Walsh. I am a licensed esthetician, master lash artist, and business coach, consultant, and lash artist and marketing strategist for lash artists just like you. We are continuing a series of the legalities and realities of running a lash business. And today I have guest Cayla Smith of Wink Eyelash Studio in Yakima, Washington, talking about her experience of being a solo lash artist and expanding her business, the ups and downs that went along with that. The reason I am having Cayla come on is because I feel like her story is very much the typical lash artist story, except the one thing that makes Cayla different from my experience with lash artists who have expanded is she chose to, once she got information that she had structured her business incorrectly, she did everything possible to get it back on the right track. And I want Cayla to share her experience of what that was like, the ups and downs, the struggles, the positives, everything about expanding a lash artist, because I think you could probably relate to Cayla the most out of all of my guests of what it's like to go from a solo lash artist and to expand. So Cayla, welcome, and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you. So I am Cayla Smith. I own Wink Eyelash Studio in Yakima, Washington. And I have been a lash artist since 2009. So almost, close to 10 years. And I've had my own business for that whole length of time as well.
Fabulous. So you became a lash artist and went straight into it.
Yes, not by plan, just kind of in my small town, that was kind of the only option, was to rent a room somewhere. We don't really have any spas where it was an option to go work somewhere. So kind of just by chance, I ended up, opening up my own business. And from
I call that a boba. It's a business owner by accident.
Yes, definitely by accident.
Perfect. Okay, so let's kind of get into, you got licensed as an esthetician and got certified as a lash artist, and then your only option was to have your own studio space. So how did you start your business from that point?
Well, when I started my business, I just rented a really small room in the back of a salon, and I did that for almost 3 years. And I just got to a point where I was just so overbooked and overworked that I needed someone just to help me. I was tired of turning away clients. And so I had friends in other cities and other states that said, oh, you can just bring on, independent contractors. It's super easy. And then, you can just pay them commission. You'll make half the money. They'll be happy. And you don't have to do any work.
It's a win-win. Why wouldn't you do that? So easy.
Why not? Yeah. Why turn away business? And especially at the time in my town, I was the first lash artist here and especially first studio that specialized in lash extensions. So it wasn't like I had other resources here to go talk to and say, hey, can I refer clients to you, or can we refer back and forth, depending on schedules. So that wasn't really an option. So that's kind of how my journey started. And I brought on my first independent contractor. But again, I was in that small little room, so it was hard to share the room. So I ended up opening my own studio, thinking that was the next step, is okay, I'm going to open my own studio. And so I did, and I still do have that studio almost 7 years now.
How big is it?
It's about 1,400 square feet. So
that's a commitment.
Yeah, we have about 8 lash tables, mostly private rooms. So it is pretty large. And at first, I started out to help with filling the space and, my expenses, like leasing out hair stations.
Okay.
And so I did do that route for a while. And then just about 3 years ago or so, decided with my business, I just want to be a specialty studio. Yep. So our main focus is just eyelash extensions versus it being like an add-on type service. So that's what kind of sets us apart, is that we just specialize in lashes. And then from there.
You have a niche.
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. So the 1099 route, what was that like for you in hiring on? For those of you that aren't from the US, 1099 is what we call independent contractors. It's the tax form we use for 1099. So go ahead and kind of explain like what your situation was with the 1099s and how you transitioned into having employees that were W-2 employees.
So when I first did the 1099, it was going well. I didn't seem to have any problems or issues with getting 1099 contractors to work for me. And then as I was growing and getting more, I kind of started to realize, and things kind of got brought to my attention, like especially around tax time. I had one of my independent contractors who kind of questioned things and said, I don't know, I don't understand the portion of taxes I pay and about like who's the 1099. So it was at that point it kind of got brought to my attention, like, what am I doing this right? Is this right? Who's, giving who?
Because you had researched at that point, once it got brought to your attention, who is responsible for the 1099,
Yeah,
right?
I had researched it, and from what I've read on the irs.gov website, it's a very, very gray area. So there's no set number of, if you do A, B, C, D, you're an independent contractor. If you don't do this, you're an employee. So there was just really gray areas, things such as, that you can't control their schedule, you can't require a uniform, you can't require them to not work anywhere else, things like that.
Yep.
And so looking at that, they had to take their own payments, that kind of thing. So looking at that, I thought, okay, well, I'm not, controlling their schedule. They are taking their own credit cards. They are doing, these things. So I thought, okay, that's fine. And then, like I said, it's just, I would hear from other people. And then just kind of more concern grew to me about, okay, is this right? I mean, it's just such a gray area, and I'm just a pretty black and white by the book person. So I didn't want to be in that gray area. So I ended up, after talking to my business attorney and accountant, deciding to just go ahead and do W-2 employees.
Right.
Honestly, it's a lot more work. It's a lot more expenses. I had to pay all of the taxes, and when I was doing that, and I had to now have a new task of doing payroll and doing time clocks and, a lot of extra added stuff that I didn't even realize, is so different from having contractors.
Right. But the risk that you were at with independent contractors, and I'll share a story that there's actually two stories, one that I was a part of and one that I was aware of, where she was an esthetician at a spa classified as an independent contractor, and she got wind that she was misclassified. So she called the Department of Labor and washed her hands of it, just basically like tattled on the business owner, but she knew that the business owner was married to a very wealthy doctor. So she was kind of looking for her payday because she knew she had been illegally classified. And the Department of Labor took over from there, and that girl won the lawsuit. They settled out of court, but she did win the lawsuit. And she actually left the field altogether, but that was how she became aware and how she took out the business owner without the business owner even really knowing. It wasn't like they had a conversation about it. Extreme case, because I don't know that everybody has those intentions, but that was her intention. Another situation that I was at was I was working as an independent contractor at a spa, and the Department of Labor showed up when the owner was there and asked who are employees, who are independent contractors. And what had happened was a previous employee from, I think it was like 2 years back, had filed for unemployment from her current job, which wasn't the spa that I was at. But in her unemployment, she listed this spa owner as one of the places that she had worked. And the IRS had no record of her being an employee because she was an independent contractor. An independent contractor is completely independent of the business. So by her putting down that she was an employee there, because that's what she thought she was, she worked there. She had no idea the difference between employee and independent contractor. And that red flagged this business in the IRS, and Department of Labor came over and said, you either need to make this right, and there were penalties and fines associated with it, or we're going to have to shut down your business take you to court, essentially. So there are ways that are out of someone's control when you misclassify them, whether you know it or not, that can still come back to bite you in the ass years down the road. So that's how I understand ways that people can find out you're an independent contractor and misclassified is when they get wind of it and they smell money is a possibility. You then, as the business owner, are completely held liable for that because you should have known better. I know nobody expects lash artists to know all of the laws, but if you are adding on more responsibilities and bringing on staff, it really is up to you to be responsible for employment law, labor law, HR practices, like interviewing someone. There are things that you legally can and cannot say in an interview, and somebody could come after you for discrimination if you slip up and say the wrong things. So there is a lot of liability that goes into it that I think you are not alone in thinking that I'm just so busy, I just need to bring on someone.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard, like you're saying, people like that. And that's a whole nother subject about protecting yourself and being an LLC or a S Corp and not being, just a sole proprietor, because if someone does see it as a money opportunity. And with that, that's a thing. I think there is a lot of business owners that are doing the 1099 knowing that it's not very ethical, but for them, it's more advantage for them. And so that for me, I wasn't trying to do that. Like I said, I just went in blind, not knowing. I'm not having any business background. But like you said, that's not an excuse to not do the right thing. And it just that once I was, aware of these things and realized how much of a gray area it was, that's when I made the choice to say, okay, I want to do it right, even though it's going to cost you more, even though it might not be as popular of a model to seek employees, that kind of thing. I was willing to do it the right way.
So what were some of your first steps in transitioning from, the independent contractor to W-2?
Oh man, there's so many things. But
Right.
one thing for me that's been really helpful is finding a payroll company that can make sure all my taxes are being paid and all of the deductions and like that are being done right. That was just another thing that I didn't want to have to try to do myself. I'm not an accountant, I'm not a bookkeeper, I'm a lash artist. And so I have tried to outsource things like that, so I know they're being done correctly, and it's just one less thing that I have to worry about. So I would say that's the biggest thing that's been a help. And then with that too, I also changed my training and how I trained, independent contractors previously and now employees. So previously, since I would be training these independent contractors and they were, working here at my studio, I wasn't, I had a no-compete contract, because if they left, I gave them everything I knew, so there was a no-compete.
As the independent contractors, you had a non-compete?
Yes, yeah. So I had a non-compete because I had poured, into them all my knowledge of doing this, and I've attended several advanced certifications and whatnot. And so again, that was another thing that I just heard was a standard of people, were doing
right.
That.
And I do want to make a clarification that for the most part, and again, I'm not a lawyer and I cannot give legal advice, but from my understanding of a non-compete, it's only for an employee-employer relationship. So even if you have independent contractors or somebody watching is an independent contractor and they're worried about this non-compete clause in their contract, which most people don't even have a contract to begin with, it's actually not enforceable unless it's an employee-employer relationship. There's also, and it depends and it varies each state, that you cannot prevent someone from making a living. So if all they do is lashes and your non-compete says you can't do lashes within like 30 miles of your business, you are preventing them from making a living. And a non-compete that's not what it's there for. Non-competes are traditionally there for protecting trade secrets, or like you said, the investment of the training into them. So even if, as somebody as an independent contractor and they have a non-compete, they can get out of it. And somebody who wants to pursue suing someone for breaking or violating the non-compete, but they were classified as an independent contractor, it's like calling the cops that somebody stole your drugs. You're just drawing attention to yourself that you misclassified them in the wrong way. Yeah. So just wanted to make that clarification before we move on for anybody watching, that if there is a non-compete clause to an independent contractor contract, then it's not likely that it's enforceable. Okay.
Yeah, definitely a good point. And it is a red flag, like you said, if you're not. And like I said, again, I wasn't doing this with any ill intent.
Right. Of course not. You wouldn't know anybody. You don't know what you don't know.
Yes, exactly. So one thing that was a big thing when I changed over to W-2 employees was I talked over this with my business attorney about different options, and also my accountant. And so what I decided to do with my business attorney was to have a training curriculum and charge for my training. Okay. So people were, opting to take my training just like I did. I paid tens of thousands of dollars in education, which is definitely worth it, I believe. So they would take my training, and then once they completed it, if they were to be hired, after a year of employment, would pay that half of that back as kind of an incentive for choosing to work here. So I don't know if that's a common thing or not. That was just kind of something with. I was trying to figure out a way, because like you said about the no competes, I just also, I don't want to prevent anyone from working if that they need to make a living. And, I just don't want employees working for me that don't want to be here. So I don't want them to feel like, oh, I can't leave because I can't work somewhere else type of a thing. I want people to not feel like it's, just like a hostile thing, like, oh, I can't work here because I'm in a contract type of thing. So it's definitely at will, and it's a very simple thing, but it's just, I'm reimbursed for my time and compensation.
Right. And that's incredibly smart. The way that I had structured it before I got to the point where I was doing interviews, and as a disclaimer, in the interview process, when I realized I didn't want to bring on employees, but I did everything up until that point. For me, I structured it where they were on a probationary period for the first 90 days where they were paid a lower rate or a lower hourly rate. And then after the 90-day probationary period is when based on key performance indicators, is what they're called, KPIs, that if they had met the standard of they could do a classic full set within 2.5 hours or whatever standards you set, that if they met those, then they could be taken off of probation, get to their regular pay rate, and move forward as a regular employee. But up until then, it was kind of this, we're testing each other out. I'm being paid for the training I'm giving you by collecting more money off of each service and not paying you less. But once you reach that 90-day mark, we have a reevaluation, and either you move forward, we end the relationship, or you're still on probation until you reach those key performance indicators. So that's definitely, you definitely want to be protective of your knowledge, your investment in the training that you've taken that you are now giving to someone else, with the intention that it's an investment in them as an employee. But people can just come for the training and leave. So they're getting paid training to do lashes. We want to avoid that scenario. So I think that's either way, as long as you're finding some way to get paid. The route that I hear that I don't suggest is that somebody is, that if they leave within like a year's contract, they owe back a bunch of money, right? Like, so, you know, you're guaranteeing that you're going to work for us for a year, and if not, you're going to owe us $10,000 for training or whatever. The odds of you being able to get that money back and having that contract locked in, for the most part, people who leave a lash job for another lash job still aren't making that much money. So even if they owed you $2,000 or $3,000 for this training that you gave them, it's going to take forever for them to pay it back. It's not going to do well. People aren't going to want to work for you if that's the way it's laid out. So I would rather people take the either percentage of each service until their training is paid off and have it be an ongoing thing, or training is paid for upfront. And it's not an employee-employer relationship until, you know, that contract is signed and training has been done, kind of how you have it set up. So I think that's wise for you to make sure that you're reimbursed for your training.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, I don't, really make much money off doing that. The point is, like you said, it's just so I know people that are serious. If I just post that I'm hiring to give free training to half my town that would come and apply and then leave after the training. So it's just more to show that they're serious and that they do want to work here, and they, they're serious about lashes and they're committed and invested. So that's just the way, like I said, that it's worked for me. But as far as like other ways, I know some people still do non-competes, and depending on the state, yeah, it depends. But really hard to uphold. And like you said, even charging people, really hard to then get that money if something were, if they did leave and you were trying to get $10,000 out of it, type of thing. And I mean, I have it a very reasonable rate, just like what it would cost to go to a class, and I actually give much more than that. So I haven't had any.
And it's ongoing mentoring too, because they have access to you.
Yeah, exactly. So
what's the reality of having employees as far as your day-to-day life or your day-to-day schedule?
Well, the main thing that I would say that's changed is that I went from being a lash artist, which I loved, and I'm so passionate about lashes, to being a manager and a business owner, wearing a lot of hats. It's a lot of management, a lot of employee management, and also like with this, I mean, now I have to learn about laws. I've taken workshops on leadership and a lot of things, nothing to do with lashes. So I lash less now than I did, when I started this out, because that was the whole thing. I was busy lashing, and so I needed help. And now my focus has completely changed to being a business owner and all of the duties with that versus being an actual lash artist. I still do lash. I've just cut down a lot because of having to, manage other things. Having employees brings a whole slew of other responsibilities and
paperwork.
Yeah, and a lot more, less freedom, I guess, is what I would say.
So what was your hope for when you brought on your independent contractors, or you were looking to expand? What was kind of the vision or the romanticized version of what you thought was going to happen?
Well, first I would say I didn't go through a whole business plan like you suggest people to do, which everyone should take your advice and do those type of things and write out all your finances and all that. Like I said, it was just, I was busy and I just wanted to accommodate these clients and not turn them away, because I want to help people and make people feel good.
Right. Well, and you were turning away money too. I mean, there was demand for you, and there just wasn't enough of you to go around.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So once I, sorry, what was the exact question again? I want to make sure.
What was your romanticized version of it versus kind of the reality of it, which I think a lot of lash artists, they want, I think we talked about this earlier, the bragging rights of being a business owner, when in reality, the day-to-day life of what a business owner is not this romanticized, dreamed up version.
Oh no. No, there was no, like I said, I didn't get into it to be a business owner. I didn't think that that was a great, thing to aspire to be. But for me, I just did it because, like I said, there were just clients that I felt like I found my niche and what I was good at and what there was a need and a demand. So that's why I thought, I need to expand and keep doing this and, have started with contractors and then have employees. So that was kind of my thing. And of course, too, I thought, well, I'm one person. I can only make X amount of dollars. If I have more people working, I can make more money because I still have to pay the rent, whether it's me or 5 of us here. That was kind of my thinking.
Yep. So what would you say are some of the positive points of having a staff or having gone through expansion now that you're in this quite a few years?
Yeah. I would say the positive points are, if I am needing to take a day off or time off type of thing, there's people that are available to take clients. Whereas when it was just me, if I had to call out sick or, I wanted to do a vacation or something, those clients, they want in. And so, maybe they didn't want to wait a week to get in. So that's kind of an advantage that I can book them with another lash artist instead of just me. And also, there is more income, but with that, there's more expenses and more time invested too. So
you don't have the time to play with all this money you have rolling in.
Yes, exactly.
So what would you say are some of your struggles having been a boss lash artist for a few years now?
My main struggle as employees, honestly, it's a whole different skill set. And like I said, I've had to take workshops and things myself. And I've taken a business class for 2 years that, just to learn more of the business things. Yep. Like you said, HR issues, just learning, all those things just to make sure I don't get myself in any hot water. After, that 1099 thing, I've just been really, wanting to make sure that I'm doing things the correct way. And then with that, I thought, oh, I'll have more time off because they can cover for me. Well, it's actually been the opposite because I can't take time off because even though I might not have a client calling, I'm managing all of their appointments and their, clients that are calling if maybe they're not happy with something or, just staff things, especially working with all women. It just seems like there's always something,
Yeah.
In this industry, it's like somebody's always, I've had girls, get married and move away, girls get pregnant, just so many things, that happen.
Even the dynamic amongst the team, not even your relationship with them, but I worked in a salon and there was always drama with somebody else that a manager has to make sure that the business side of that is not being affected. You don't want to get involved in their personal issues, but to some extent, you're almost playing like a referee that this is not to be discussed here. You leave it outside. Like it's just having to get involved with those complications that maybe you're not aware of as you are just trying to do lashes and by yourself and it's peaceful and it's serene and then you bring on staff and it's a totally different vibe.
Yeah, it's totally different. So that's one thing for me is that I'm very particular who I hire because I want to make sure we have our good vibe and no drama or anything like that. But just with that, just issues of even, there's less quality control because for me, I love doing lashes. I want to make sure I do a great job. And I know that when every client I do the best job. But of course, I train everyone in the same technique. But again, I can't see or, be here for everything. So if someone is having a bad day and they don't do their best lashes or they rush through, that's just kind of for me, I kind of lose that, quality control with clients and making sure their lashes are perfect.
That's a good point because I think most lash artists are very proud of what they've built. And when they become fully booked, it's because of their own unique skill set, which is not transferable to another person. You can try and invest in them and get them to take really good trainings and keep their continuing education going on, but it really is just how they apply lashes. And if you're not around overseeing and checking work, which is micromanaging, which most people don't respond well to, it's hard to say whether that is the quality that you want to put your name on. But when you have a staff, you lose a little bit of control of that. Now you can keep up with continuing education, but I think that's a very valid point that just because what got you to being a successful solo lash artist doesn't mean that translates into expanding onto a staff. Maybe if you keep it small and you just have one other person working for you, but it's hard to get a really big return on just one other person until you expand. But then again, it's getting kind of diluted. So I agree with you. That's a great point. Is there anything else you want to share, Cayla? Do you want to talk about where people can find out more about you?
You can find out more about me and my business on Facebook or Instagram. It's Wink Eyelash Studio. Either one of those pages. I am going to be starting to offer my training to other licensed professionals. I've only in the past offered it to my employees. So if anyone's I'm in Yakima, Washington. So if anyone's in the Pacific Northwest is interested, you can follow the page and I'll be posting updates about that. Facebook or Instagram, Wink Eyelash Studio.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Cayla. And for anybody who's considering expanding their lash business, I do have a free download for you for the top 10 questions that you should consider before expanding your eyelash extension business. And that would be at thelashpreneur.com/should-you-expand. Thank you so much for joining me today, Cayla. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for sharing your story.